Hey everybody, this video is called "Oh, You're Back," and you probably said those words yourself before when there's someone that's been, giving you a hard time and they're back. But tonight we continue our pass-through study here in the book of Job, looking at the 15th chapter. We're going to be looking at the second round of this confrontation between Job and his friends. And so today we look at Eliphaz's second round. And through chapter 21 is we're going to see in the next six chapters of this second round. And it's going to consist of speeches given by all three friends in Job. And Job's resistance to their viewpoint is only going to make things more tense with them. And his appeals energize them to greater intensity in their confrontation with him. And Eliphaz, he's returning in today's chapter for his second session, since we haven't seen him last since chapter 5 quite a few weeks ago. So Job chapter 15 will start verse 1 through 6. It says, "Then Eliphaz the Temanite answered and said, Should a wise man answer with empty knowledge, and fill himself with the east wind? Should he reason with unprofitable talk, or by speeches with which he can do no good? Yes, you cast off fear and restrain power before God, for your iniquity teaches your mouth, and you choose the tongue of the crafty. Your own mouth condemns you, and not I. Your own lips testify against you." So we see here that he began accusing Job of sinning by attacking God with his complaints. And Eliphaz had felt that Job was guilty of empty words, and Job hadn't exhibited godly fear with righteous prayer. Eliphaz rather believed that Job was sinning in his prayer, and he gives Job a sharp rebuke. And Eliphaz, he was wrong in his judgment of Job, as he presumed that Job restrained prayer before God, and he couldn't see Job's prayer life. And yes, it is true that people do restrain prayer before God. And Charles Spurgeon once spoke on the matter in ways that we can restrain prayer from God. And one of them is, some of us, we restrain prayer before God because we don't pray often or regularly. And that's an ouch point right there, for myself included. And number two, some restrain prayer before God because they don't prepare their hearts properly to pray. Their hearts are not in the right place when they go to pray. And they don't consider who they're praying to, the way their prayer should be made. And they don't consider that they're sinners, and they don't consider what they should ask of God, and they don't show gratitude for what God has done in the past. And third, some restrain prayer before God because they pray in a formal, strict manner, that they never pour out their heart. They don't give everything in their prayer before God. And last, some restrain prayer before God because they pray with little faith and they have much unbelief. And Eliphaz, he insisted that Job was condemning himself more every time that he spoke. In verse 7 through 13, it says, "Are you first man who was born, or were you made before the hills? Have you heard the counsel of God? Do you limit wisdom to yourself? What do you know that we do not know? What do you understand that is not in us? Both the gray-haired and the aged are among us, much older than your father. Are the consolations of God too small for you, and the words spoken gently with you? Why does your heart carry you away, and why do your eyes wink at that they turn your spirit against God and let such words go out of your mouth?" So Eliphaz, he condemns Job for rejecting the conventional wisdom, as if he had more insight than any other man and could reject the wisdom of the age and kindness of God. And Eliphaz considered the consolations of God to be the advice of the friends. So Job rejected their advice, and therefore Job was rejecting God's consolations. And that's why he thought that Job had turned his spirit against God. And consolations, it means comforts. And we're going to look more into consolation in the wrap-up. And verse 14 through 16 says, "What is man that he could be pure? And who is born of a woman that he could be righteous? If God puts no trust in his saints, and the heavens are not pure in his sight, how much less man, who is abominable and filthy, who drinks iniquity like water?" So we see a strong statement made in verse 14 through 16 with regard to the sinfulness of man. And we see that it's attacking Job's claim to righteousness. And in verse 15, it refers to the holy angels who fell and brought immorality and purity into the heavens. And the truth is accurate that all men are sinners, but it's irrelevant in Job's case because we know that Job's suffering is not the chastisement of sin. In verse 17 through 26 says, "I will tell you, hear me. What I have seen I will declare. What wise men have told, not hiding anything received from their fathers, to whom alone the land is given, and no alien passed among them. The wicked man writs with pain all his days, and the number of years is hidden from the oppressor. Dreadful sounds are in the ears, and prosperity the destroyer comes upon him. He does not believe that he will return from darkness, for a sword is waiting for him. He wanders about for bread, saying, where is it? He knows that the day of darkness is ready at his hand. Trouble and anguish make him afraid. They overpower him like a king ready for battle. For he stretches out his hand against God and acts defiantly against the Almighty, running stubbornly against him with his strong embossed shield. Though he has covered his face with his fatness and made his waist heavy with fat." So Eliphaz once again returned to the same perspective, and he's acting like a judge. He indicted Job for sin because Job was suffering. And to support his relentless point, he launched into this lengthy monologue about the wicked and their outcomes in life. And he includes many parcels. He includes many perils to the sufferings of Job. And he had pain and didn't know when his life would end. And he suffered fear, and every sound alarmed him, and he thought his destroyer was near. And he worried about having food. And his suffering made him question God. In verse 27 through 35, the rest of the chapter here, it says, "Though he has covered his face with his fatness, and made his waist heavy with fat, he dwells in the desolate cities and houses which no one inhabits, which are destined to become ruins. He will not be rich, nor will his wealth continue, nor will his possessions overspread the earth. He will not depart from darkness. The flame will dry out his branches, and by the breath of his mouth he will go away. Let him not trust in futile things, deceiving himself, for futility will be his reward. It will be accomplished before his time, and the branch will not be green. He will shake off his unripe grape like a vine, and cast off his blossom like an olive tree. For the company of hypocrites will be barren, and fire will consume the tents of bribery. They conceive trouble and bring forth futility. Their womb prepares deceit." So, once again, once well-nourished, house enriched, he would lose it all. And Eliphaz concluded by calling Job essentially a hypocrite, and he was saying that the reasons that things were going so badly is because Job is a hypocritical sinner. And Eliphaz accused Job not just of being a hypocritical sinner, but he accuses him of bribery and trouble king and lying in an indirect manner, troublemaker and lying in an indirect manner. And so to wrap up today's chapter, we look tonight at the second round of Eliphaz criticizing Job a second time with the answer and accusation by him. And we see that the chapter moves into verse 7 through 13, showing Eliphaz accused Job of having a lack of wisdom or understanding. And we see that he speaks partly on the consolations of God. In Luke chapter 2, verse 25, and this is a major Christmas passage, so see, we were able to take Luke and wrap it right into the passage of the birth of Christ. In Luke 2:25 it says, "And behold, there was a man in Jerusalem whose name was Simon, and this man was just and devout, waiting for the consolation of Israel, and the Holy Spirit was upon him." So, Luke 2:25, we see that Jesus was the substance of consolation, as he was called the consolation of Israel. So Jesus, who was born in the manger, was the consolation of Israel. And we see Eliphaz continue to group Job with the wicked that was deserving of and receiving judgment. In verse 14 through 16, it shows us the total depravity of man, the universal impurity of mankind. And the Apostle Paul preached the same thing. And I know many people, they don't like hearing the doctrine of total depravity, but it is a biblical doctrine. In Romans 3:23, this is a very common verse that you probably heard of. It says, "For all have sinned and fell short of the glory of God." So all have sinned, universal. Everyone has sinned. And what a strong statement that we see with regard to the sinfulness of man. In verse 15 of Job, remember, it refers to the fallen angels. And the truth is that we are all sinners. All men are sinners. That is why Jesus had to be born, to lay down his life, to take our sin upon himself, to make us right with God. But what we must understand is that while all men are sinners, not all suffering is related to sin, direct sin. In verse 17 through 26, it shows Eliphaz held to the view that suffering comes upon only those in the wrong or the wicked. And we see that the chapter ends with the certainty of God's judgment against the wicked. And well, we will be having another video tomorrow. It's going to be a topical Saturday, but this is our last Job study before Christmas. So I hope that if you observe Christmas and you don't listen to Topical Saturday, I hope that you have a great time with family and friends and loved ones, and that, you don't get into all the secular stuff and forgetting about the birth of Christ and the meaning behind the birth of Christ, because Jesus came to die. Jesus was born to die. And so reflect on the importance of the incarnation of Christ as you are having your meals on Monday, or with friends, your Christmas Eve services, all that. And what we got to be thankful for is, because of Jesus, we are no longer under the condemnation of the wrath of God for our sin. And so we'll see you next as we look at Topical Saturday tomorrow, and I'll announce it tomorrow. So I hope you have a great rest of your evening. God bless. And that video will probably be up midday instead of 3 p.m. the Saturday normal times, because we will be doing traditions and festivities as a family Saturday afternoon through the evening. So God bless. Merry Christmas if you celebrate. And we'll see you for Topical Saturday, or back in Job 16 to be announced next week. God bless.